Let's just take a moment to just get our minds settled and present in this room. So whatever you're thinking about that is in the past, or if you're thinking about what you're going to do later, try to just bring your attention to your body sitting there, and that can help you let go of the past or the future and settle in on the now. And taking a few deep breaths can also help you get grounded in this moment in time, which has already changed. Sound the next moment in time. And think about the reason you decided to show up today. Just as a reminder of your reason for coming. And so your time is valuable. So we want to use it well. So you can try to set a motivation to use this time well. So if you're just curious about Buddhism, about the path according to Tibetan, from the perspective of Tibetan Buddhism, then that's a good enough motivation to be here, good enough reason. So based on that reason, try to set an intention to use this time well. And then just combine that motivation with the wish that it not just benefits yourself, but also it'll ripple out to benefit those around you. Sometimes we forget that just our participation in something, our presence in something, adds to the experience. And so, so we have an effect on the others that are present without even trying. We'll start with a few traditional prayers. I know it. So on page, well, you can, but if you can't see it up here, then we'll be on page 35 when I find the book, which is right here somewhere. As I opened it. There it is.
That's which page? Page 34.
So this is a traditional prayer. That's called the seven limb prayer. So if you're not familiar with it, it includes all the stuff that if you take refuge and if you consider yourself a Buddhist, which obviously, most of you aren't there yet, but this covers all the bases. So you show your respect, you make offerings, you purify, you admit to any wrongdoing you've done, so you're cleaning up your mind, you rejoice in the merit of others, of yourself and others, and then you're requesting the teachings to stay until the end of this uncontrollable cycle of death and rebirth, and turn the wheel of Dharma is the teachings. And then we dedicate all of our merits to the great enlightenment, which is emphasizing that it's not just for ourselves alone, but the great enlightenment's when everybody's enlightened and nobody suffers anymore. Yeah, they all look forward to that. So, reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And then on page 98, the refuge in bodhicitta prayer. We recite this 3 times. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Now, if you registered for the course, you may have gotten an email that had a link to where the readings are and all that kind of stuff. The reading there's a reading, the first one in the thing that's called DB readings or whatever is a piece by His Holiness, and all these pieces in this. They're short, but they're really quite good. So, I recommend that you at least read the first one by next week. It's not too long. So, and then there's a few other readings. There's not a whole lot of reading in this class. There's also a book called Approaching the Buddhist Path by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Thubten Chodron, Bhikshuni Thubten Chodron. And it's a series of books. They're like 9 or 10 volumes now. But the first one is called Approaching the Buddhist Path, and it has a chapter on the mind, which other texts generally don't have a chapter on the mind. In the Lam Rim text, it doesn't speak specifically to the mind, so it's kind of helpful. But the readings that we have are sufficient. I just happen to like this series of books, although they do stack up. Go on and on and on, because it's got, His Holiness has been teaching Westerners a long time, so it's got, and over time he's gotten our jargon a little better. And he's also got translators that are a little better with the way we explain things. But also, he started the Mind Life conferences, which are his conversations with scientists, like neuroscientists and things, to look at how science and Buddhism fit well together, And so, it has some tips about that. It also covers the Pali Canon, which we don't generally get any teachings on in this tradition. That's the, Theravadan tradition, Thailand, maybe Cambodia, the forest monk tradition. But anyway, so it's kind of interesting, and I won't speak to any of that because I have no anything. We can both read those, and that's the extent of it. So, but it is interesting. And what else? There's something else. Anyway, and it covers everything. So I've really enjoyed reading them and talking about them. Also, for the whole series of Discovering Buddhism, there's a text called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which is a transcription of a month-long teaching that Pabanka Rinpoche did, I think, in the early 1900s. Not quite sure the date, I've forgotten, to a bunch of monks. I'm sure not supposed to say a bunch of monks, but That's what I'm going to say. And so, and it's on Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the graduated path to enlightenment. So one of the major texts in Tibetan Buddhism. So the Gaelig tradition. And it also covers everything. So except the mind. But so it will frequently show up in the readings. There are no pages of it in this particular module. So that's just sort of an overview. You'll forget it all, it won't matter. It's on that link. But I do encourage you to read those. There may be a couple of people who are interested in getting certified in this curriculum so that they can teach in the future. There are also, there are tests. You just have to let me know if you want to take a test at the end. And there are requirements for that. We could send you the information about that. It may be on there, but I'm not positive. So, okay, that's enough nonsense. Does anybody have any, just questions out of curiosity before we begin? Sometimes somebody has a specific question and they wait the whole class. Yeah, Retta.
I was just wondering, I got the list of materials or whatever, but there's a lot. And knowing me, if I had to pick one of the recommended readings, which one would you?
I'd stick with the official readings, which are DB1 readings for this, for this module.
Oh, okay.
And they're not long. It's I think I don't know. They're really not long. You have to just, and we have 5 weeks or 6 weeks to read them in.
All right. So I guess I think I was looking at recommended.
Yeah. Okay. You just, don't sweat the recommended at this point. There is a YouTube video, one of His Holiness's teachings on an old one on, what's the title of that? Ethics for a new millennium, something like that.
Yeah, well, they had it it seemed like they only had it on VHS.
No, this one's on
This one was
YouTube.
on YouTube.
This
Okay,
one's
the
on
other one
YouTube.
was only on VHS.
So that could be interesting. Yeah, the other ones, forget it. If you've updated your equipment, you won't be able to watch those. But yes.
The series of 10 books by the Dalai Lama. Is that, in your opinion, does that have to be done in an order? Or can you?
Well, in all fairness, I decided to read all the ones on emptiness first.
That's what I just ordered, 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah. I don't think it's probably but you've read Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's fine if you've already read basically the other material that lead up to that. So if you're not familiar with any aspect of the path, it's kind of probably a little ambitious to jump into emptiness because it only makes sense in context of everything else. I mean, it can kind of make sense without it, but I don't think it gets you very far. But that's just my personal opinion. So, okay. I have to remember what I'm doing. Okay. So Lama Yeshe is one of these people. Is this Lama Yeshe?
One of these.
You don't know which one?
Yeah, no, I know one of them.
This is Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe is the founder of this tradition, along with Lama Zopa Rinpoche was his, what would you call it, disciple. Lama Yeshe passed away in 1984, so Lama Zopa Rinpoche took over very early on, and he passed away a couple of years ago. So, which hence the prayer that we do in the swift return. But Lama Yeshe was a very unique teacher. For Western, I mean, it's just wonderful. He really wanted to teach Westerners. Lama Zopa Rinpoche claims he didn't study much because he'd be so busy trying to learn English. I don't think that's entirely true. I think he studied just as hard, because also had a fascination with learning English. So, and so they brought the teachings, to this country, and they have 100 and I don't know how many centers around the world, but it's why I met the teachings. There's actually an affiliated center in Raleigh, North Carolina. Who knew? So I'm always grateful. I wouldn't have I wouldn't be a nun. I wouldn't have the teachings if I hadn't run into one of these centers. And I was hooked in a week. Just totally hooked. And the reason I'm still hooked is because I've really seen a change in how I think. And my life is better because of it. And my actions are better because of it. My speech is better because of it. And so I sleep better at night. I have fewer regrets. All in all, life's better. Took a long time to have confidence in all the teachings, because we don't have like proof. You have to have developed your concentration to the point where you can have realizations and things to a level that I have not achieved yet. So I'm not likely to have any realizations yet.
How long have you been studying?
I've been a nun for it's 26, 24 years. And I guess I've been a Buddhist for 28.
Okay.
So, so whatever that's worth. Okay, so Lama Yeshe, I hope that you understand what the word spiritual really means. It means to search for, to investigate the true nature of the mind. There's nothing spiritual outside. My rosary isn't spiritual. My robes aren't spiritual. Spiritual means the mind, and spiritual people are those who seek its nature. So that gives you some clue of what the mind means in Buddhism. We have a tendency in our culture to kind of look at the mind as like, you have this reasoning mind, and then you have this emotional mind, and emotions tend to not be rational. We have all these beliefs about things like that. None of that holds true in Buddhism. Mind in Buddhism is all our different mental states, whether we associate them with emotion or reasoning. And in fact, some of the minds we most want to perfect are things like compassion and love, things that we don't associate with reasoning in our day-to-day, in our culture. I remember having arguments with my dad as a teenage girl, just about, we go, oh, you've got to not be so emotional. I'm going, not emotional, I won't care. So, and that's sort of the point here, is that heart and mind are the same word in Buddhism. We're aiming to try to integrate the teachings so that they become part of of us, that they are it's like everything. We try to develop our abilities to practice with a mind that is heartfelt, that it's not just some intellectual exercise. It's because we care about ourselves and we care about each other and all living beings. And we want us all to get free of suffering. So it's very much a state that my father would say is not reasonable. But anyway. And one of the things, I recently was reading something and it was talking about how everything that we experience we experience it in our mind, our consciousness, that's the only way we experience anything. So it's all mind, which just blows me away when I really think about it. That's all mind. It's all about the perception of our consciousness. So this gets to another point that is kind of distinct about between, way our culture defines things and the way it's being defined in Buddhism, is that in Buddhism, we say there's 6 types of consciousness. So we have our sense consciousnesses, our eye consciousness, our ear consciousness, our nose consciousness, our taste consciousness, our tactile consciousness, and we also have a mental consciousness, but they're all consciousnesses. Now, our sense consciousnesses are dependent upon our sense organs. So if you're born without eyeballs, you can't see, so your ability to have visual consciousness is not there, Our mental awareness, although it finds our physical, the brain, its support, and all the things that support the brain as very vital, it is not considered the mind. It's the support of the mind, the physical support of our minds, but it is not mind. So consciousness, so some scientists don't agree with that. Some do, though. Some say that the mind is what's non-physical. So we'll go through this more in detail. So the point of this, His Holiness says, is that learning to differentiate destructive from constructive emotions so we can subdue the former and nourish the latter. Is that how that's spelled? I think I misspelled that. I dictate instead of type because I don't know how to type. So I must pronounce that. I didn't catch it. Sorry about that. Is a worthy endeavor on a personal as well as societal level. This may be full of little amusing touches like that. So the point is that there are many states of mind that are constructive, that are useful, that are skillful, that will help us suffer less and can actually help us develop the wisdom to get out of this suffering state. But there are also states of mind that are destructive, that don't help us at all, that only can result in suffering in the future. So we're learning how to tell the difference. So His Holiness brought up a point in a Mind Life conference, that scientists describe emotions as having 3 components: a physiological component, an experiential component, and a behavioral component. Buddhism only concerns itself, we consider mind as the experience, And the way he described it is that, this is Lama Yeshe. The way we experience every part of our lives is affected by the qualities of our mind and by the coloring filters of our mental attitude. The mind is the nucleus of samsara and nirvana, which means it's the creator of these states. So are people familiar with these terms? Okay, samsara is, I guess, a Sanskrit word that means it's referring to the state of uncontrolled rebirth, death and rebirth. So it's saying that our existence now, which is, we've gone from life to 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 life. Our consciousness has always existed. We've just been trading bodies. So that, and it's uncontrolled. We don't have any control over where we're born, blah, blah, blah. It's just totally out of control. That's called samsara, or cyclic existence. And it's the nature of suffering. It's like the best you can have is a good life with no problems, but you're still going to die and lose everybody you love. I mean, that's the best deal we can get. But that's a horrible deal. It's just like, it can be better than that. I'd rather better. If there's a choice, I'm going to opt for better. Nirvana is a state of peace where you're not stuck in this uncontrolled cycle of death and birth. They're both states of mind. They are not places. And this is kind of hard to have an understanding of. It's hard to understand that if we really take charge of our minds and develop our ability to understand when our way of thinking is perpetuating this uncontrolled cycle, that when you stop that, you're just simply no longer in it. You have a question? Okay. That state of peace is known as nirvana, but we tend to think of it as a place that you go to. But it's actually a state of mind. Everything is a state of mind. The state of mind we have now is a state of mind that is stuck in samsara. This is due to our contaminated states of mind, our mistaken states of mind, our misunderstanding of how things exist. And so that everything that we do under that mistake keeps us in this cycle. Questions?
So you can become liberated before death, but then then you still die. You have the option.
You don't even have to. In our tradition, if you become enlightened or liberated in this very life, you can choose to keep this body, but you don't need it anymore. They say that when the Tibetans were occupied by China, a lot of the prisoners just seemed to, they were just gone in the prisons. And they say it's because they were already liberated. And so I can't be of any use here, just move on. So, these are things that are surreal to me. I mean, I have no knowledge of this. But the point is that when someone becomes enlightened, this is why it's not a place. When someone comes enlightened, fully enlightened Buddha, that individual doesn't move. From that moment, they never arise from meditation again. Because it's a state of mind. It has nothing to do with it. They can manifest any kind of body they want. They can manifest as anything they want to, if it's going to be a benefit to others and the others have the merit to have that benefit. They have a pure land in that moment, because that's also a state of mind. So if they need to teach beings who have the merit to be born in a pure land, they'll just be there. It's not, because just like we create this universe with our samsaric states of mind, an enlightened being manifests pure environments, because there's nothing contaminated in that state of mind. Fully aware of samsaric beings, minds, and samsaric beings, suffering, all that kind of stuff. None of that changes, but they are not a part of that experience. They just know it exists, and they're just ready to help us in whatever way they can. Unfortunately, they can't clean our minds for us. They can't get in there and just say, quit thinking that way, stop that, and make you change it. They can't do that. We are all in control, are all responsible for our states of mind. So we have to learn how to clean up our minds, and abandon certain ways of thinking that are just not useful and not true. But this takes a long time to settle enough to think about this, that, oh, okay, it's not a place. So if we all had different habits of mind, our entire world would look differently. Because this is a manifestation of our world, our samsaric mind, all the beings that share this world. The world is just a result of our states of mind. So it's obviously a mixed bag, isn't it? We have some beautiful things about this world. We have some horrific things about this world. And that's because we're all a mixed bag. We have good qualities and we have not so good qualities. But the nature of our mind, according to the teachings, is pure. The pollution of our minds can be removed. And again, the mind's not physical. So we're not talking about a place or, different, states that we had to throw in the washing machine and clean. It's all about recognizing that the way we think has an effect, just like all cause and effect in the universe. We see it all the time in the physical universe, cause and effect. Well, our minds also have effects. And we can see that in little ways, like if we decide to plant an apple orchard, that only happens because we had an idea to plant an apple orchard. The apple orchard can't exist without some consciousness deciding, oh, this would be a good idea, and then did some actions to make it happen. So we've affected some plot of land somewhere, by our consciousness, by the idea. And we're doing that all the time. If you look at all the things that we've invented and that someone's produced, all the stuff, we're having an impact all the time on the physical universe. And the Buddha just said, yeah, it's our mind is what's directing the play we're in. So, okay. So what is mind? So according to the Buddha, the mind is not physical. That's not the brain. So the brain's activities are not emotion itself. The experience that we have can maybe light up a certain area of the brain, but that experience is not that activity. In Buddhism, we'd say that the mind precedes that activity. So the chicken and egg thing, the mind comes first. So if anger arises, and so a part of your brain goes, whatever it does, like we can't say that area of the brain is anger. It's the experience of that person, that living being, that is the anger. It is not that part of the brain. Our states of mind can lead to actions, but the actions are not that state of mind. Is that making sense? Okay. Yes.
So instead of saying I am angry, I am feeling anger. Is there
I'm experiencing anger.
experiencing?
It's just about understanding that Well, one thing we definitely want to do is get out of the habit of thinking we are the emotion. It's just a state of mind. It will pass. It's impermanent. We don't have to listen to it. We can have the experience of anger and decide, okay, I'm not doing anything while having this state of mind and watch it go away. So we may have no action. Or we may only have the mental action of restraint. So it's really important to start remembering or recognizing when we're thinking that we are that. We're not fixed like that. Nobody is. We are not our states of mind. We are simply moments of mind. They're moments of the body and moments of the mind. Both are temporary, constantly changing, literally from moment to moment, which means we can't even keep up. We don't see any of this physical change moment to moment. We see it over time. But it's been changing. None of us have the same body we had when we walked in the room. All these cells, lots of cells have died. Microorganisms are doing whatever they do. I don't really like to think about it. So, but it's just, we are constantly changing. Science teaches us this. It is, if we could see with electron microscopic eyes, we'd see a lot of space between a lot of motion. We just can't see that with these eyes. We have the appearance of being kind of solid, stable, but it's not true. This is one of the ways in which the way things appear to us is false. And scientists have been studying this for, a long time. None of the things that appear to our senses are accurate, which is kind of wild. Well, the mind is just as momentary. It's not physical, but it also arises and goes away. And then there's the next moment of mind. So we're just a series. What the I is a name given to a series of mental and physical events that are constantly changing, coming into being, going out of being, coming into being, going out of being. And I is just a label we put on each of those moments. And so our continuum is just a series of those moments. And, in this life, for 20, how many years? 24 years, been called Tendron. Before that, they weren't called Tendron. So, it's just a label. But it's not on anything solid. There's nothing fixed. There's nothing you're stuck with. It's constantly changing. I mean, we're stuck with these bodies during this lifespan, but they change constantly. And so which body are we kind of sick of being with? Well, the more I age, the more I'm sick of this body. But it'd be nice to be out of a samsaric body altogether because they don't work. So, okay. So it's not physical, it's not the brain. It's function. The mind's function is to perceive, to be aware. That's what it does. Definition is referred to as like clear and knowing. Sometimes it's referred to as mere clarity and awareness. Sometimes luminosity or luminous in knowing. So there are two parts. Clear is one part, is a clarity. It's getting at the pure nature of mind. And then you have the awareness part. That's the knowing part. So we have the aspect of our mind that is awareness, consciousness, all those words that are synonyms. And we also have its emptiness of being in any way permanent, fixed, concrete, whatever. And that's its pure nature. It's completely changeable. Everything about the way we think can change. We can change it. You know, just like you can be not know anything about Buddhism, and then you take a class, and then you have some knowledge about Buddhism, you've changed your mind. You've changed the knowledge in your mind. We've been doing that our whole lives, gathering knowledge, changing our views, you know, misunderstanding things, thinking that we've got it right now, and then we find out, no, wrong again, you know. But it's very malleable. Malleable. But its basic definition is that it's clear and knowing. And it is our capacity for subjective experience. What does that mean, subjective experience?
What you think and what you believe.
Yeah, the subject is our mind. The subjective experience is our mental experience. And you have yours, I have mine, you have yours. We all have our individual subjective experiences. Even a Buddha, whose mind pervades everything, knows everything about everyone, even all the other Buddhas, you know, has an individual continuum. But it has the same qualities as all other enlightened beings, doesn't have the same history. How outrageous, isn't it? So how is mind caused? We would say the sperm and the egg of our parents was the cause of our physical body. But that is not the cause of our mind, according to Buddhism. Our mind is caused by a previous moment of mind, and a previous moment of mind, and a previous moment of mind. It has no beginning, no end. Our mind has always existed. I know, it's outrageous. Go ahead. So there are no new minds.
How come we're not smarter?
Yeah, I feel like we're, you know, those of us who are still in samsara,
Obscuration.
we just haven't gotten it right. We haven't figured it out. So, of course, you can also have the view, you know, like I have the view, I'm the last one in the star, and y'all are just all helping me out. You know, sorry, I'm so slow. So,
I can promise you that's not true.
oh, you think you could promise me that's not true? You think I'm supposed to believe that?
Why would I lie?
Yeah, right. So each mind moment or mental event has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's literally, it's when because we talk about continuum, there's a continuum of mind or a mind stream. We don't want to get the idea that it's like if you poured water, well, it wouldn't even be like that. I don't think we can come up with an example. It's like the particle wave thing. It is like particles, you know, they're individual, discrete mental events. When one mental event is there, no others are there. And it gives rise to the next mental event. Okay. So it is a continuum, but it is not a continuous object.
But you can have like two thoughts at the same time.
Sort of. They say it's actually pretty difficult to have two thoughts at the same time. We have a lot of things that accompany our thoughts. And we'll get to that in this class. So not in tonight, but we will get there.
Are you sure that it's not continuous?
Yes. Because it's impermanent.
No, but I mean continuous. In other words, we say that there's a moment of mind. But
And then it's
between
gone.
those two moments of mind, isn't there a moment of mind between those
Yes.
two moments?
That's why it's, yes,
So it's,
they're all discrete moments. You know, there's not this fluid thing that, you know, it's like we see a river, right? And we think of it as sort of this river, one river. Oh, it's one river. But actually, you can never look at a river, the same river twice. You know, whenever you look at the river, it's different water. Different water, it's different water. Our mind is like that. It's changed in every moment. It is impermanent, but it's eternal. Our mind didn't ever begin, and it has never ceased, and it will never cease. So this is one of those jargon things. In Buddhism, impermanent and eternal don't have anything to do with each other, basically. Permanent things are not eternal. That's because they're not, it has nothing to do with that. And it's hard to get that. It's just really important to understand that. So we say that consciousness has no beginning or end, so it's eternal. That's how we kind of think of eternal, right? That it's always present. You know, yeah.
Would it be the word infinite?
Depends on what you mean by infinite.
Well, eternal, and we're talking about sort of never ending.
It just depends on what you mean by infinite. If you mean there's no beginning and no end, yes, it's infinite. If you mean that it's, how do I put it?
It's an infinite number of moments of mind.
Yeah, you could say that, but in any given moment, there's just one. So I just don't want you to confuse impermanent with ceasing to exist. Each moment ceases to exist, but that continuum of consciousness does not. It just gives rise to another moment of that consciousness.
So each moment of consciousness is dependent on the previous moment.
Yes,
So
that's how that's its cause and effect.
it's dependent on, each moment is a moment of dependent arising.
It's both a cause and a result.
Like,
Yeah. And it's just that we say, you know, it has a beginning, middle, and end. We wouldn't be able to, you know, it's instantaneous. I mean, it's just, you know, we wouldn't, it's not in a sense of time. This is trying to get at the fact that it's discrete. You know, there's a moment of time, a moment of mind gives rise to the next moment of mind, which gives rise to the next moment of mind, so every moment of mind is an effect of a previous moment of mind, and it's a cause of the next moment of mind. I have a headache just thinking about it. They say there's 65 thoughts in a finger snap. So that's a lot. And if you ever try to meditate, you kind of start to feel like, oh, maybe that's true. But fortunately, we're using our mind to look at the mind, and it can keep up.
There was a woman named Mary who said that she was successful with meditation,
Meditation.
and she was gonna forward the name of the monk that. Anyways, it sounded really interesting.
Mary. Oh, yeah. She's just found a meditation that works for her.
Yeah, I was wondering if she shared.
She has not said with me. I'll have to email if I have her email, you know, to find out. Yeah, I have a feeling I know which one it is. It is really good if you have trouble meditating to find some guided meditations that work for you, because everybody's different. So somebody will find this great teacher of guided meditation. They love it. And the next person listens to it and goes, oh, that's annoying. You know, because of, you know, that's just the way it is. So everybody likes a different pace, a different tone of voice, a different speed. You know, it's really kind of interesting. So don't be disappointed if you try out the one she's really responding well to and don't like it. You know, I mean, that's just the way it is. We have to keep trying. Eventually, you just want to do it on your own. You want to be so familiar with the topic of meditation that you don't need a guided meditation, because what you're doing then is listening. You're not reflecting. And so it's incredibly useful, and we need it as a starting point. And we need it as a starting point every time we get to a new subject. It's like we need to know how to reflect on it. But at some point, we need to be just in our reflection on it and not be listening to someone else's words, if that makes any sense. Okay. So speaking of which, let's do one now. So there's one that you can practice this week. It's one you can download from that link. And it's about the continuity of consciousness. And it's a very simple idea, but that doesn't mean it's easy to do. How y'all doing at home? Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Good to see
Hey,
you.
Annie.
All right. You can mute yourself again. Thanks, Christina. Oh, okay. So let's get settled into our chair. Do you want to close? You said that people turn off the lights these days for meditations.
But
It's,
no.
I don't think you can do it at night.
Yeah, we do it when it's light outside.
Yeah, I think then it would just be dark and I won't be able to read the meditation. So I get nervous, so I have to have a cheat sheet. So take a moment. Has everybody meditated? Have you ever meditated? Okay. So the main thing about meditation is that you try to relax. Just relax your body. Can be hard because you might hate this chair, but at home you try to get into a seated position that you can tolerate for 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And you try to relax your neck, relax your shoulders, and sometimes taking, 3 deep breaths can help you do that. It's helpful to try to keep your back straight. So it's this idea that we're relaxed but alert. It can be helpful to follow your breath for a few minutes, just feeling that sensation as it goes in and out of the nose, or your belly rising and falling. Doesn't matter when thoughts arise, none of that matters. You're just using the anchor of the breath as a way to not follow your thoughts. They're just in the background. Whenever you notice that you've been carried off by a thought, just bring your attention back to that sensation of the breath going in and out of the body. Now try to generate a motivation. Set the intention that you're doing this meditation, to increase your understanding, to give it a try. With the hope that it'll be of benefit to yourself and those around you. Now let go of following that sensation of the breath and begin to watch the activity in your mind, the flow of thoughts, emotions, sensations. You don't need to follow the story they're telling. Just recognize when they arise. Be like a scientific observer. Just watch the mental process. If you get caught up in your thoughts, just return to that sensation of the breath and begin to observe again. Try to catch one of these mental moments. And from that moment, go backwards. Try to remember the previous mental moment. And keep going backwards. Try to go back to a moment of mind while you were driving to get here. Try to go back to this morning when you woke up. Were you dreaming before you woke up? Are there connections between one moment of mind and its previous moment of mind? Now gently return to this moment. And imagine your mind flowing out before you. One thought, then the next, then the next. Does the flow ever end? Does it stop? Does it just continue? And again, relax in the present moment. Think about your motivation at the beginning. And dedicate your efforts to be of benefit to yourself and all sentient beings. Again, notice the sensations of your body sitting here. And gently return to the class. How many people have the experience of doing a meditation class and not thinking at all? It's so hilarious. Different reaction. How you know, oh, catch a thought. I'm sorry, I'm not finished. So when you practice this, don't do it right before sleep because you'll just fall asleep. But the idea is to really just, first of all, it really clues you in on whether you pay attention to your mind at all. It's like, it's sort of like we get hooked so quickly with our thoughts into the storyline that's being created, that we just kind of go, whoo, and so we're not really noticing when we completely change the direction of our thinking, because we've gotten, some experience has diverted us to a completely a different topic, all this kind of stuff. But doing this can help us kind of be aware of how it never, it's relentless, the thinking. The mind is always working. So, and then it's continuous, that we really we're aware of sensations, because again, remember that our sense awareness is also a type of consciousness. So sometimes our thoughts are about some sense awareness. Oh, I'm getting cold. The air conditioning's too strong. Whatever. I mean, so it's all the experiences, and they're all happening in our mind. The body may, we have our tactile awareness, but where do we experience that? It's our mind that's doing the experiencing. I just had a horrible thought about, people who have lockjaw. And so they're frozen in their body, they can't communicate, they can't talk, they can't do anything, but their mind's fully active. And, talk about knowing that it's all an experience of the mind. That doesn't sound like fun. Anyway, random thoughts. It is helpful. So I request that you try to do this. I think there are two different meditations on continuity. There might even be three, so you can try one that suits your way of thinking. But the whole point is to get used to this idea that the mind is momentary, mental event after mental event after mental event, and it doesn't really stop. The trick is not to get caught up in the story, to just be aware of, oh, this thought gave rise to that thought, gave rise to that thought, and so on. Some people are so good at being able to follow their mind, they can go back and back and back and back into the day before that. But that's not the point. I mean, it's just we're trying to get used to these different ideas of what really is the mind. Because our happiness and suffering are also mental events, you know. So the states of mind that we have are the condition for our experiencing of happiness and suffering. According to the teachings, every moment of mind leaves an impression on our mind stream. This is how we form habits. You know, so we think a certain way, and that places an impression. And then if we have a similar thought, that deepens that impression. So we have these habits. When we start a new habit, a new thought, you know, that can, you know, we can start a new, you know, line of footprints in our mind stream. And this becomes important when we talk about cause and effect in Buddhism, that our habits of mind, these imprints on our mind stream, come to feel like a out of control, you know, that we can't control it. Like, say, if I'm a really impatient person. And so that feeling of impatience can feel like to me that, you know, oh yeah, like I can really stop this. But it's just a habit. And the more I'm aware of how impatient I am, I can see how I have the habit. I practice it a lot, you know? So as soon as I have to wait, I'm practicing impatience. It's, you know, so, and that this gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So the more you can kind of, you know, you recognize what's a habit of mine. And then if you recognize this isn't a good habit, this is not helping me. And it certainly doesn't help the people around you. An impatient person is a drag to be around. You know, then you start to recognize that you've got to quit rehearsing this habit. You know, because it's our habits that, in our habits of mind, that's what they are, that drive our actions of body and speech. So it's like, I know that when you drive the geshe somewhere, you know, in your car, the geshe is just the title that Tibetan teachers, when they've completed their course of study, have. It's like saying professor. They will, you know, and you say, oh, you can change the air condition or the heat or whatever to, you know, whatever, you know, if you're not comfortable. And they never touch anything. And it's because they're practicing not reacting. You know, it's something they've learned to do, that just because you're uncomfortable, you don't have to do anything about it. What purpose does that serve?
I would imagine it allows for a lot of contentment. It can just be with where you're being.
Yeah, because if you don't give in to that, it just goes away. We don't realize that by always trying to fix something that we're not particularly comfortable with just feeds the idea that anytime we're uncomfortable, we should try to fix that. And we're almost never in ideal conditions. There's always something that can be tweaked, but we rarely have the ability to do that, to actually tweak it. But at home or in our car, we change the temperature, we change the volume of the radio, we change stations or the podcast or whatever we listen to these days, who knows, you know, that we're constantly have some moment of dissatisfaction and we fix it. Yeah.
It's like not scratching a mosquito bite.
Yes, not scratching a mosquito bite, like, or measles. Remember, not being able to scratch the I had the measles. As if you were, in between, maybe didn't have them. People are having them again, so it makes me think. So, but it's this, this, like, that scratching it will feel good very briefly, and then make it worse. So you're in that torment, But it really is this: the more we can learn to tolerate discomfort, the more content we will be. That's one of those ways in which we create our own suffering.
Tolerate or accept? Is there a difference?
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's a difference. It all depends on how you define these terms. I mean, so it's really but it is this sense of not fixing it. So, the more we can just be okay with being uncomfortable, I'm not going to do anything about it. The more we get used to that, then that urge to constantly be tweaking things to our comfort subsides. It just becomes less common because we're not giving it in, we're not practicing it all the time. This helps us increase our ability to tolerate more and more uncomfortable situations. So when there's something difficult that arises, we're not wasting all our time wishing it just wasn't there. We're using our mind to create some wisdom and try to figure our way out, or just to be able to deal with it. Because things, happen all the time. Fortunately, most of it's little, but every now and then it's not little. And if we can't, we just freak out if we have no practice at dealing with it. It's like the difference between a new mother and a mother with her second child. They've learned a lot from that first experience about when to panic and when not so much. So, and it's really helpful. It's not that, so it's not a bad thing to have, that knowledge. So, and that knowledge is full of uncomfortable moments of just not knowing what to do, not being able to figure it out, all this kind of stuff. And, but in general, your child is still safe, and, you've had another one, I don't know how people choose to have another one, but that's all right. So, I really don't. You just, but this is good news, is that we really can become accustomed to a lot of the ups and downs of samsaric existence without it freaking us out. So we can suffer less just by, understanding that it's what increases our suffering is the freaking out, or the impatience, or getting angry, or feeling like it's not fair, whatever it is, whatever your side conversation is going on and things aren't working out well, as opposed to just, and the older we get, I find that a lot of people get worse, but also a lot of people kind of get a little more relaxed. I remember when my parents were going through that phase where everybody, where all of a sudden their friends were dying, and it's like, and then I remember when they kind of got used to it. You'd ask after a friend, and they kind of, I think they're already gone. And it's like, but they lived a long life. My dad died when he was 88. My stepmom died when she was 96.
Oh.
So they outlived everybody pretty much, so it's just like, but watching that, really becoming aware of how even that is something they got used to. Now they could have made themselves miserable by focusing on it more and more. But these are choices we make. We don't realize we're making them. We think it's life's fault. It's, I have nothing to do with this pain and misery. It's happening to me. but actually we're by our mental habits, we're making it worse. So this is why getting ahead of our mind, really trying to see that sometimes the way we're thinking is not helpful and that we can change that. It may be difficult or it may seem impossible at first, but if we think back to other difficult times in our lives, we can see that we can't even remember it. It passes. All right. Any questions before we close for the evening? I recommend reading Understanding the Mind. I think that's the first selection. I have so many things open on mine. And trying to do this meditation on continuity of consciousness. And it's easy, but see, it's all relative. To me, it's easier to do it alone at home, or just, when you have the quiet place, because you don't on a time, you don't feel like there's a time span and nobody else's voice is going, so you go at your own pace. But the key is just to try to catch a moment of thought, and when you don't even have to catch one in your stream, you could just kind of go, oh, remember when I was thinking this at lunch or this morning, and just try to go back, because this is just to help us really understand. It's just a series of moments. Anybody awake at home?
We're all awake.
Oh, Anne. Okay. So now we want to remember our motivation at the beginning. Just kind of oh, what was my motivation? And pat yourself on the back for, for whatever you might have fulfilled in that motivation. Whatever. You didn't snore, and that's always, polite. Hmm. And also think, and so what we do now is we dedicate. That's the bookend. You set a motivation in the beginning, and the end you dedicate. Dedication just means you're dedicating the benefits that you will experience due to your positive actions, your positive efforts in the future. And we're dedicating it to ripen for someone else, to become benefit for someone else. The reason I just remembered this has been a question in the past, that the reason why they say that the cause of a moment of mind is a previous moment of mind, whereas the body, same with the body, the previous moment of the body is the cause for this moment of the body, and tomorrow's body is the cause of that is today's body, et cetera, et cetera. You just get smaller and smaller into moments of time. But in Buddhism, it's taught that things that are physical have physical causes. Things that are not physical cannot have physical causes. It doesn't make any sense. There has to be congruent. So this idea that the brain is the mind, if you really look at consciousness, to me, I don't buy that. It's like when you think about all the things that people have thought of, done, created symphonies, whatever, blah, 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 to think that it's just a physical result of a bunch of stuff I think that there's more to it than that, that consciousness is more than that. But in Buddhism, it's just taught that the things that aren't physical can only be caused by something that's not physical. So that's another thing to ponder. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, we too dedicate all these merits in the best way that we may follow their perfect example. The reason why we say this, Manjushri and Samantabhadra were great disciples. But this idea that they realize things as they are, that means they understood reality as it is. So their way of dedicating the best. They knew what they were doing, so we're just copying them. So when in doubt, just say, and just like His Holiness, just makes it, someday we'll get there, but until then. Okay. The long life of His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Shinrei Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then this for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losam father and son, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. So if you have any questions during the week, you can always email me. My email address is Tendron, just Tendron 108 @yahoo.com.